Okay, hi there again. It's John, and
Hi, here's Liane.
yeah. So we were having a long conversation off camera about a very big topic, which we've decided to actually split it down into probably at least two, maybe three
Yeah.
videos, and start off with the subject of feeling trapped. So now many people in even a really good relationship, as relationships evolve and so on, or even right at the start of a relationship, at some point you can feel this sense of feeling trapped, that you've suddenly you're being forced to operate in a certain way, that you're being that you're following somebody else's agenda, and there doesn't seem to be an easy way to get out of it. And so that feeling of traps, which everybody experiences in every kind of relationship in some sense, or not. Sometimes in major ways, sometimes in smaller ways. So how does that appear? Can you give some examples in kind of a therapeutic session?
So the first thing is to realize when we feel trapped, there's a lot of thinking involved. Yeah, there's a lot of thinking going on where we are kind of victim. Yeah, we don't have the control anymore. And I found that when people talk about feeling trapped, there's a lot of blaming involved. Yeah, there's often I feel trapped because something from the outside, circumstances that could be carrying for the parents. So it's not only relationships, but it could be the partner, it could be the children being small and then being stuck in that situation. But it's often that it looks like the outside world is trapping you. But that doesn't exist, because we create our world how we know it through thinking and then feeling in a certain way.
And I think there's so that's the one element we were talking about off camera is first there's a feeling of entrapment, but then when you start to explore that, then the finger gets pointed. It's somebody else that's causing that entrapment, and because the perception is it's somebody else, then the person doesn't feel they can do anything about it, which is the thing. It's being imposed on them. Okay, and this is why it's such a big subject. So that brings us into the area of permission, which is and which is actually where we started our conversation. I realised we needed to pull it back a bit to what does a lack of permission look like, and that feeling of entrapment.
And the main person who has to give permission is yourself. So you have to give yourself permission to change your thinking, to change your rules about your life. And that is really, really important, because at some point you have accepted some rules that could be imposed by your parents or by the partner or by society, but you creating your rule book, so you're writing down your rules, and you can drop rules. Today, now, you could just say that rule is not relevant for me anymore because I feel trapped with that rule in place.
Yeah, yeah. And in earlier videos we talked about needs and wants and so on. It might be that you might soften that rule. It might be, well, I need to do that, and actually, well, I want to do that, and maybe I'm going to do it less. You start to get some choice back. So just to summarise this sort of first part of this whole conversation on going from trapped, and then there's blame. Then there's a kind of, in a coaching, therapeutic, or, even the group kind of stuff that we'll do within IntoU, there's a realisation that there's a permission issue here. That actually what's allowed to happen is you've given somebody else your options and your choice.
And the power, you give the power away, and sometimes it feels a bit strange, when you realize that you were the one who trapped yourself. It's like you're in a prison and the door is open, but you're not, you're trying to get out there instead of just opening the door. And sometimes it is hard to look at that, but that is freedom, because when you really realize that you can give yourself permission to change, you are in a driver's seat and you can change it to whatever you want. Yeah, and sometimes people then get resentful and say, oh, I did that for such a long time. And don't go into past, because you can't change the past. Drop the past, but do the choices now, because today would be another wasted day or another trapped day if you don't implement it. And as John said, maybe when you have that realization, when you have that insight, it's actually you trapping yourself. Sometimes it becomes a choice, because you say, like, actually, I would like to change my job, but not now.
Yeah.
And with that realization, with that acceptance,
Yeah.
you know, the job becomes very, very much easier to cope with and to manage.
Now, I will say this is why it's such a big subject, that choice could be really scary too. So actually, and that's why that's the real value of coaching and therapy in all its forms or whatever it looks like, and in the kind of IntoU kind of workshop environment that we have, is to enable people to explore different choices and what they mean, and actually find ways to communicate those new choices to the people around them. That could be the tricky part of it.
And sometimes to just play with it in a sense that this is a setting, let's say our workshop would be a setting where you can explore it without actually having to talk to the people you need to talk with, and then see how that feels. And it's like having a test run or something like that. And you will see that you survive. Yeah, we have survived a lot of things, otherwise we wouldn't be here to just realize that sometimes we blow it out of proportion, but we are so much more powerful than we think.
So for now, on the whole subject of permission, which is a whole big thing in choice, what we'll say is, if you're feeling trapped, and especially when you notice you're blaming somebody else for that being trapped, actually what you're doing is you're giving away your power and choice, and to take a pause and actually stop and think about that feeling of entrapment and what that really means. We'll come back to this on a future video. Is where to go from there. We start exploring those choices. It's kind of like, ooh, my goodness, because it can be really scary for people, to really take ownership of their life.
Yeah.
The reason why people stay trapped for so long is actually it's easier to blame other people than to take charge of your life. Sometimes
familiar.
It's familiar,
and familiar is a strong pull.
Yeah, it's your normal. No matter how bad it can actually seem, it's what you're used to. Okay, so even to go to something better can actually feel uncomfortable, and because you're not used to it. But that's why it's such a big subject.
Yeah,
anyway.
and we come back to it.
We'll come back to it. Okay, so trapped, blame. Think about permission. Who's giving who permission for what? Okay.
And just allow yourself to think and explore.
Yep. Stop and think.
You don't even have to do anything. Just think.
Don't do anything.
Bye for now.
Cheers for now.